Hey everyone, today we're going to paint a wild summer wreath. I feel like we've now got a good handful of flowers that we can put together in a lovely little arrangement. So we're going to have buttercups, daisies, black currants and the lavender that we've painted quite recently. So get your kit and let's get going. I thought it would be a lovely idea to create a little wreath using all of the plants and flowers that we have been painting for the past few sessions really. So here's a little circle, and this is going to be a lovely wild wreath. So we're going to have lavender, buttercups, daisies and blackberries, and the blackberry blossoms. Such a tongue twister. This circle looks quite small, but what we're going to do is we're going to paint things that are sort of bursting out the sides and things. So I think this will be really quite lovely. So when I paint wreaths, I always recommend starting with your focal flowers. Now we've got a lot of things here that are all sort of fairly similarly shaped, but I think at least with our daisies, those are quite sort of large pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a few circles where I'm going to have open-faced daisies, just so I know they're there, and we'll do a few sort of oval ones as well. Get an oval there and a little circular one there, so I know those are going to be there. And then our buttercups we can just make a start on. So if you haven't already watched the individual tutorials of all of these, I'd highly recommend going and having a little watch of those before you have a go at this one, because all the techniques that we're going to be using are outlined in great detail over there. But I just thought it's such a nice array of plants and flowers and colours that it would seem a real shame not to take this opportunity to paint a lovely wreath. So starting with our little buttercups, which are quite large buttercups, which is quite cool. What I'm doing is I'm painting them in a loose manner, and then we'll be able to have them detail built up. And we're going to have them at different sizes as well, so just do a slightly smaller one, and that will be sort of overlapping over the top of our daisy, because you can see that little circle that we've just painted to one side. I'm going to have one of my buttercups just coming up off the side, so we're going to have a few curves. And I normally do draw things in pencil, but I think it's also good to start to try and get used to being able to sort of trust yourself to freehand some of these shapes. So we're going to have one coming off like that, just trying to do it freehand. Okay, that one's a sort of 3/4 one, which I quite like. And I'm going to do one more little one just here. And once you've got your focal flowers in, it's just much easier to have those positioned before you start to paint in all your foliage, because that's the thing that's really the sort of space filler. So whilst we've got those drying, we're now going to look at the daisy petals. Now the daisy petals are a really good exercise in painting white petals onto white paper. And as you can see, this colour is not that white, and yet when it dries it's going to turn into a beautiful, very translucent, pale, crisp colour. And again, this daisy tutorial is all there in full for you on the other episodes in this YouTube channel, so I highly recommend going and having a little look at how it all fits together. Now we've got one here that's going to overlap, so we're just going to not paint too many of the petals. But the reason we have the circle in the middle is to anchor all these petals. Daisy is a classic example of a flower that can very easily go a little bit off the rails if you don't have a central anchoring point for all those petals. So what we're going to do is we're going to let these dry, then we're going to paint in a second layer of petals, and we'll be back to get that all ready for the next stages. Okay, we've got a second layer of all those daisies done now, and then I'd love to put in a few daisies from the side, so I'm just going to paint little daisy cups. There we go, we'll have one there. Just drew in a few more handy little pencil lines, and I think I'll put another one in there. Little U shape, clean it off. And maybe, well, I think that's good for now. Okie dokie. The next thing is we need to think about our other flowers going in. So our little bits of blossom. I'm going to have one there, one there, nice one at the top. And for this was a lovely opera rose. There we go, opera rose. Little hair and a little bit of opera rose as well. Okay, and these were done very similarly to the buttercups, the central dot, but the only difference is here is the shape of the petals coming out. So the petals are much more slender. So just make sure that you're really using the fine tip of your brush to paint those, and then a little bit of sap green in the middle and just push it out to the sides. Let's do this one up here. So again, wet pink. Oh no! That was lucky. Oh my goodness. We can sort those little bits of green out. Proper drama. So I'm rather enjoying about filming these YouTube videos is learning that it's okay if little things go wrong or don't quite go as how you planned, because at least it's still a useful learning. Oh dear, there we go. Stick my hand in the green. It's useful learning because these kinds of things are the pitfalls of what you're going to come up against when you're painting watercolour anyway, so it's kind of useful. So don't worry if you stick your hand in the paint like I've just done there. It's all savable. And a little bit of green, dab in the centre, make sure it's going out everywhere, lovely. And last one in our little blob just by all the chaos over there. And just using lots of water on your brush. So just remember, it's all about adding more water and less colour, especially in the way I paint is all about layering up. So if you've done a really strong first layer, you can't really go anywhere else. So we've got our focal flowers in. The other thing that is quite large, I guess is a good word, is these blackberries. So we're going to paint those in as well. And then once we've got all those painted in, we're in a position to start adding our foliage. And the lavender also sort of I'm treating as foliage because it's long and slender. So it's more a case of fitting it around the other pieces. So here I have my sort of claret coloured paint, and I'm going to pop in a circle there. So quite recently just did a blackberry blossom branch, which included how to paint the blossom, which is just here, as well as how to do the blackberries. And I love this approach to painting the blackberries because it just, I don't know, it just really captures the essence of them. And there's nothing more satisfying in sort of loose watercolour painting than finding a watercolour technique that also really encapsulates the essence of the thing you're painting. So I'm just dropping in some darkness there, just around the edge, which will bleed in because we've got lovely loose watercolour. So I'm going to find a few more places to put some of those blackberries in. And as you can see from the blackberries on the stem, they come in all sorts of shades of the sort of plummy colour. So I think it'll be really fun to add in some different stages. The most developed sort of large ones are the darkest, so that's also handy for being able to decide the sort of size and shape. It's funny to have blackberries featuring in a summer wreath, to be honest, because really we wouldn't expect to see them quite so early in the year, but hey, that's just the nature of how our weather seems to go these days. I don't want those little unpainted circles to be too large because they're meant to be little shine dots, so we don't want them to be sort of too much. There we go, and I'm not going to put any darkness on that one. Okay, so I'm going to paint a few more of these and then we can reconvene once those are dry. Time to start adding some lines and foliage and some stems. So let's get to it. So I've got my circular line here, and what I want to do is I'm going to use it, just get a bit of fluff off my brush. I'm going to use it as my guide, but it's also going to be something I sort of tangle about in. So firstly with daisies, there we go, so we've got our daisy cup from the side. And our daisies have got these lovely little leaves. So this is an opportunity to just cover over that little smudge, and then I'm going to bring in and curl around from that buttercup and give a little leaf in the space here. So I love this kind of painting because you're just sort of working it out as you go, and I have got 1 or 2 pencil drawn lines. There we go, back into the circle, but on the whole I'm going to be playing around with it a little bit, and of course our lavender. So I'm going to get my bluey green colour and I'm going to start positioning a few sprigs of lavender. That's the first one, and I'm also going to just put in a few of the baseline bits. So I've got my purple and I've got my bluey green for the lavender, so I know that that's there and will be added in a little later. So it's nice to have a few different greens on the go, and I'm going to pop in a lavender here as well. And oh, look at that, it just is going to sort out that other little smudge. So there you go. Like, the cool thing about watercolour, especially with wreath painting, is you're sort of building up your composition the whole time. And it's funny because I think at the beginning I always worry because I'm like, uh-oh, this looks rubbish, but it really just takes a bit of time to come together, and it's lovely when you start seeing results. And the reason we do the foliage second is so we can start to sort of even out the unevenness created by putting big sort of bulbous flowers in the first place. And then last off, we can use the sort of little filler flowers or little sort of sprigs of something. So I probably use maybe a few more little blackberries or some miniature daisies or buttercup buds even. That might be quite nice to just help fill in those little gaps. Like one there, and we can just put on a few little things. So in this little video I'm sort of doing it on the assumption that even if you haven't already visited the other tutorials for these plants, that you will do so, so you'll be able to work your way through those tutorials. And this video is less of a full-on tutorial for you and more of a sort of celebration of putting them all together. So the brambles and the blackberries, almost about to say black currants again, have got this lovely red clarity stem which then blends into the green. And then we've got a sort of golden colour to add the little sepals for the blackberries themselves. And there's usually a bud knocking about on one of these blossoms, so once your paint is dry, you're able to paint over the top, of course, with watercolour. That's the cool thing. So that's when we refer to layering, and blending is when it's still wet. Right, so I'm going to start working my way round, and then we'll come back together when we're ready to start putting some detail in. We've gotten to a place where I've been able to add in all the plants and flowers now, but the one thing we don't have is any leaves, because I've left those last, and I mean those leaves there, because it just felt like a good kind of thing to be able to sort of help with the shaping. So I can just sort of add in a leaf there, might just pop one coming out there, and you see it's just a really nice way of filling in gaps or sort of extending things out a bit further. I might just have a leaf that comes in here, because these are all leaves from the brambles essentially. That's the sort of, if we're going to be accurate about these things, that's where the leaf has come from. So we'll pop one in there as if it's coming off there. It's funny, you have to keep on sort of stepping back and looking at the piece as a whole to work out where on earth a new leaf could go. I really want something to go in there, so I will just curl one in. So this is nice because this is less of a tutorial and more of a sort of nice thing to watch, because sometimes you learn all this painting and then you go, well, what am I going to do with it all? And this is a lovely way of putting it all together. And then just do little tips. These leaves, some are still wet, some aren't, that's okay. I just like to keep them nice and simple when we're doing a sort of a leaf in a wreath. I don't want to get all stuck into lots of detail. I think it sort of takes away from it a little bit. Okay, so I think that looks really nice. There are just one or two things I have missed, so let's see, and we can just do one last kind of rundown. So there are some of these daisies from the side, which I haven't finished off. And the central dots and things in the blossoms, and also some filaments and little sepals as well, so we need sepals here. What I really enjoy about this is because I've picked flowers that are all seasonal, as in they're all growing at the same time. I mean, we've talked about how odd it is the blackberries are around, but still, they're here. It just means, in my opinion, that the colours naturally work very well together. And I've no idea if there's a notion that, I mean, I don't think it is true that flowers of sort of complementary colours grow at the same time of year, because there are plenty of flowers that are growing at the moment that aren't in this kind of colour palette. But what I love is they just all seem to be happy together on the page, which makes me happy. There we go, layering up some of those. Just trying to see, I'm trying to look over and see what I've missed. I do like to do just a little bit of darkness on some of these little green buds and berries. So this is just with some fairly concentrated sap green that I'm just giving a little sort of underside, a little bit of depth, a little bit of detail, some of these stems. That's looking nice. And then the only other thing left to go is some shadow. And I know that shadow seems a bit of a strange notion in a floral wreath, but what I mean by that is when you have things like daisies, they could just do with a little bit extra to help them stand out. So I've just gone in on the underside there. And again, if you have a look at my my other tutorials, you will soon see the benefit of adding just a little bit extra darkness to the daisies. It really helps them stand out. So I'm just taking my brush and dashing it along the lines of the outer edges of the petals, and then with a bit of water just going over it a little bit. I'm not doing them all, as in I'm not going all the way around the edge. That's not what I want. It just means they stand out a little bit more. I run the risk of sticking my hand in the middle of this. And we survived to tell the tale. It's always the fear, because when I paint at home I often turn the page quite a lot, but I like to try and keep it all static so you're able to see what's going on. And then I like to do a little bit of a murky greeny yellow colour. So I'll get a little bit of that in there. That's the stuff. And just dot it along the underside of some of these central yellowy yolks. And then you'll be able to while away a lovely hour or so just putting together your own summer wreath. And then this is the coolest kind of birthday card or greetings card you could give someone. Or even, how nice would this be as a wedding stationery design? That would be kind of fun. You could have the date in the middle. Maybe some initials, the date would be nice. Lovely. Okay, so I'm going to rub out the pencil and then I'll show you the finished piece. And with this, my trusty putty rubber, rubbed it out, and that looks pretty lovely. How nice to have all those flowers in one wreath together. And just remember, you can always go back and watch the individual tutorials of the different flowers. Now, I'd love to see how you're getting on. So if you want to share your videos with me or your paintings, get in touch on Instagram. I'm at DeWinton and you've got that written in the episode notes below. It's great to share these progress paintings basically, and of course if there's someone who you think would really enjoy this too, why not share these tutorials with them as well? Anyway, until next time, of course, like, subscribe and comment below, and I'll see you again. Bye!